Hello and welcome to this week's This Is MediaCity podcast. In a few moments' time, Lucy Meacock will be sitting on that couch there. The reason I'm sitting here now is because sometimes podcasts and videos have technical issues, and we had one of those today. So what happens about halfway through? There might be a slight change in audio. No, there will be a slight change in audio, and we'll explain what we did to make it and revive it at the end of the show, but we didn't want to do it all over again because Lucy was so brilliant and the answer she gave was so awesome. So afterwards we'll explain how some brilliant people at MediaCity salvaged what we thought was unsalvageable. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to our home, the brand new content studios at the heart of MediaCity in Salford. This Is MediaCity podcast is going to be hearing from all of the people who make this place tick, the businesses, organisations, restaurant owners, you name it. My name is Stephen Chapman. I am a producer, a journalist, and I'm the founder and creative director of 39 Pictures, which is based just a few floors above here. I'm producing this on behalf of MediaCity and in partnership with the University of Salford, and all of the production crew behind the scenes are graduates from their MediaCity campus. So please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell everyone about the This Is MediaCity podcast. And if you want to get in touch, if you want to appear, if you want to sponsor the show, please email us. This is MediaCity@39pictures.com. And today I am joined by media royalty, the one and only Lucy Meacock. Welcome.
Thank you. That's an amazing introduction, Stephen.
And only a few takes, so that's even better.
It's going awfully well so far.
There aren't going to be many people watching, listening, who don't at least know your name, but you're not just TV BAFTA multiple BAFTA winner, Chancellor, University of Salford. The list goes on. Welcome, and thanks for coming.
It's a great honour to be here. I love MediaCity, so this is right up my street, Stephen.
And I probably ought to say right at the start, we do know each other. My first job was on Granada Reports.
Yeah.
And we were together for several years.
How long ago was that?
I left Granada just after I gave him my expenses for the World Cup in Germany. It wasn't related. I'd like to point that out. So that was about 2006.
Right.
I think. So that's a long time ago, isn't it? But what a career. What a career you've had. And you were telling me earlier on, there aren't many people that can replicate that career nowadays, are there?
Well, I've been incredibly lucky with my career. It had real energy. I just kept reinventing myself along the way. People can't believe that we used to get television programmes out with no computers in the newsroom, no Wi-Fi, no internet.
No mobile phones?
No mobile phones. It was quite extraordinary, and people are astonished that we could do it. But the media never stands still, does it? And it shouldn't. We need to be right up there. I don't really like looking back. I'm only doing this because it's you, Stephen. And it has been an incredible career, and I've been very lucky. And if anyone can get any inspiration from that, then that's great. But we need to always be looking forward in the media.
Now, this is brand new, This Is MediaCity podcast. Most people we will have on this show won't have had quite the experience in front of the cameras as you have. What we've decided, our team here of graduates from the University of Salford, is that everybody should start with an icebreaker. So they've got like either or questions.
Okay.
So we got some either or questions here. They've been written by James. I'm sorry. He did get his degree from the University of Salford. You gave him his degree.
Can I take that off him a bit?
You will when you see the style of his writing. I may have to read it for you, but do you want to pick a card, any card? As I say, I may have to read it for you.
Okay.
But can you read that? No.
Okay.
Multi-screen or locked in. So that is, when you're watching TV, are you fully focused on what you're watching, or are you just tapping away on the phone at the same time?
Depends what it is, doesn't it? There are some incredible dramas that keep me hooked in, but there's always other stuff going on. I think because I'm a news addict, I've always got half an eye on what's happening in the news. also, your friends are sending you WhatsApp messages, and you've got an Instagram presence, Facebook, everything's going on, isn't it? You can't just sit there anymore in a little bubble of your own.
I'm taking that as multi-screen. You're basically Generation Z.
Is that bad? Is that a
No,
bad
that's
thing?
good. We talked about we're not looking back. You're the future.
The only thing is, I think it shows a lack of respect to the people who are making the television programme. So I do go to the cinema a lot because I can't do it there. And I like that environment where I have to sit and watch something that has been beautifully crafted and show it some respect. I've just been to see the Bob Dylan movie, absolutely loved it. And really, you should not be on your phone while you're watching something as good as that.
Good point. I'll take that one. Right, we'll give you one more. And it's up to you whether you can read that one as okay or not. James is worried, isn't he? What's
It's
that one?
just as well that as part of the degree is not
I know.
your handwriting.
Well, the best piece of advice might be better handwriting. Best piece of advice, either received or given.
Oh. I think it was, and I do give this advice to people, if you're presenting live, never laugh at anything that's not funny. Because if you're being authentic, I think the viewer straight away thinks this is false, it's not genuine. And I hate it when I see people laughing like hyenas on the telly at something, and I just think, well, why? That's not funny. I don't think it's funny. Maybe I just don't have the same sense of humour. But I think it's a really bad thing to do. It's not genuine, and telly should be as genuine as possible.
The other thing about mics, the best piece of advice I was told, never swear in front of one, always assume it's live.
Yes, that is a very good piece of advice.
Because there are many examples over the years when that can be your biggest friend or your biggest enemy, can't it?
Absolutely. And also, if you're mic'd up, don't go to the loo without making sure that you switch the microphone off.
Yes.
But I think most people know that.
I think they do. I hope so anyway. Okay, let's move on. Chancellor, University of Salford. Tell me about how that came about and what it means to you having that role.
It came completely out of the blue. I was approached by somebody who said, would I consider taking on the role of Chancellor at Salford University? Because it had never been on my radar to think of something like that. I had huge respect for what was going on at Salford University, but I always thought that would be a role for someone who had a career in academia, and you could have knocked me over with a feather when they approached me, and I was so honoured, and it was such a proud moment for me when I went to meet them and they spoke about what I could bring to the table, and it absolutely matched up with what's in my heart. That I've had a long career in broadcasting, but really the most important thing for me now at this point in my life is to nurture the talent of the future and to make sure that the opportunities are there for them now, and that when those opportunities come along, they have the skills to take those opportunities. And I love the north of England, as you know, Stephen. I was determined always to have my career in the north. And the way that the momentum at MediaCity has gathered has been down to a massive collaboration between different organisations. Of course, Salford University, a very important player in that.
And what have you managed to do since you've been Chancellor? Is there anything like it? How's it helped the Salford? How's it helped you, I suppose, as well?
I think what I've enjoyed the most is going to talk to students at the very beginning and maybe offering them a little bit of advice, and perhaps the things that take the wind out of your sails a little bit and the enthusiasm out of you when you're young and inexperienced. I think generally the best idea in a newsroom or in a production meeting, it often comes from the newest person to that meeting, because they haven't heard you say, oh yeah, we've done that before, or yeah, we tried that once 10 years ago, it didn't work. listen to what they've got to say. And I think, I hope that I always tried to do that. And quite often I'd be in a meeting and I'd say, well, what about this person who's just arrived? What do they think about it? And I think we can learn so much from people who are just coming into the business, but then they can learn from the people who've been in the business for a long time. So it's a good meeting of minds. So I like that. Graduation days are just phenomenal because you do get the opportunity to talk to the graduates just as they're about to embark on their new lives. Often they're already in the business anyway, but to see them, to see the variety of people who come through Salford, the variety of skills that they've got, I love that. And then we all go outside and we have this fantastic photograph taken, and I find that really moving because, you know, there am I in the middle of all these people who are young and full of enthusiasm for the future, and I find that absolutely uplifting and wonderful.
You'll be glad to know that earlier on we went out and spoke to some students from the university, some of them in the first year and I think what surprised me in a way was how many were coming from different parts of the country, I think because they wanted to come to MediaCity, to come to Salford. So let's watch that now. What are you studying?
I'm studying television and radio production.
Fantastic, you shouldn't be so shy then.
No, I think it's just instant. I'm used to being behind the camera now.
Used to snap.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about why you've chosen the University of Salford.
I do know the employability rate here is really good. Like, we get a lot of work experience opportunities and stuff. Like, normally first years don't manage to get one, but I've already managed to get one for Monday.
Why did you choose to come to Salford?
Mainly because it's in MediaCity and there's a lot of good opportunities you can get, like with jobs basically.
And are you from the north or have you come specific for here?
Yeah, specifically for here. I'm from London. In my old school, everyone was a film student basically, and because it was a film school, and they were all talking about Salford because of MediaCity.
The college lecturers told me to come here because they've had quite a few people from the past on the course that I was on at college come here and been successful, go on to work with Sky, ITV, BBC.
And why did you choose Salford?
Well, it's far away from home, which I wanted to go far away, and the location, MediaCity, is just perfect for our degree. I think I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else.
It's like being famous every day.
You're always bumping into people. Like, I was at Co-op like 2 weeks ago, not even like within uni hours. I was just visiting MediaCity, having a walk around. And like, I think 4 cast members from like Emmerdale walked in, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Felt really like, just like out of this world. It's like I don't know how to phrase it. It just didn't feel like it should be happening.
I think one of the most, I suppose, interesting, exciting things that's happened during our careers as journalists in the media in the north is potentially this place, isn't it? I can't imagine as a student, when I was a student, thinking I was going to come to the Northwest to get into the media. I came to the Northwest to do languages. I don't know how I got into journalism. I think it was because I got into the music in the 90s in Manchester, and it just kind of happened from there. But for you as Chancellor of the University to hear people coming from London, from the Midlands, coming specifically to Salford to study here, that must make your heart sing.
I am really pleased to hear that enthusiasm, not only for Salford, but for the wider Northwest, because we need that. We need people with fresh ideas from all over the country and internationally coming to Salford. I think creative people need creative people around them, and I think that we all learn from each other. And we don't want to have a bubble of Salford only. We want to mix it up, and we want to mix that with, you know, I do want to see opportunities for people locally because, you know, for example, when the BBC moved to MediaCity, I didn't want to just see people bussed in or trained up from London to take all the plum jobs. It was really important that we skilled up people in the Northwest so that they were ready to take those jobs. So although I think it's really important to get a mix, I think it's important to get students in, because quite often they will make the Northwest their home then. We often see that. People often meet their partners when they go to university, or they just think, do you know what, I feel like I belong there. So the important thing is that once students are at Salford, that we look after them, that we make them feel very much a part of what we do, that they belong here and that they belong for life, and that they'll put their energy and their talent to good use in the north of England. That's what I want to see happen.
And that's partly pressure on the rest of the north of England to kind of go, we're getting all these great students, we need to be able to give them their work that they've been trained up to do. Now, I suppose, I don't know if it's an elephant in the room, but I have to ask the question. You didn't go to university, did you? Even though you're a chancellor of a big one. Well, how did you get into journalism?
Well, I didn't go to university because my mum was ill, and I couldn't get a grant to go to university either. So there were two things going on there, which meant that it was very difficult. I got offered a place and I couldn't take it. But I managed to blag my way onto the local newspaper, and in those days the training was fantastic. They would send you away, they're like the apprenticeships now. So they sent me away for 6 months of very, very intense training where we wrote for the local newspaper up in Newcastle, and we did shorthand. I managed to get my shorthand up to 110, 120 words a minute.
Can you still?
I'm not bad, and you know, people say, well, why do you need that skill? Well, you need it because if you go to court or if you're in the newsroom, the phone goes and you need to make a quick note, you need to make sure that you can read that back and that legally you can say, well, yeah, they did say that, and I wrote a story based on it, and here's the proof that they said it. Here's my shorthand note. You can't just record everything that you do. So I do think that those old skills are very important still. They taught us, I think I got a distinction in law because I was really committed to it. And I know that they used to take 12 school leavers a year and 12 graduates. And the graduates that year included John Craig, who went on to be the political guy for Sky News, who's fantastic. He's had an amazing career. Sally Magnuson. But they were the graduates. They were the really top of the top. And somehow I managed to sneak in under the radar, but was almost running a parallel career with them 3 years ahead because I managed to get those qualifications without going to university. Now I think it is much more difficult to do that, but I am a great supporter of apprenticeships as well.
When you started out, did you see yourself as a TV journalist, presenter, reporter, or was it purely, I just love writing and I just want to be a journalist?
Do you know, it wasn't really the writing, and it wasn't that I wanted to be famous or anything horrendous like that. In fact, I was so shy that I used to really hide away, and they used to call me Bambi in the first newsroom that I worked in for that reason. It was people that interested me and people's stories, and I'm a great believer that everybody has a good story to tell you, and if you don't get that story out of them, and if you come away saying, oh, do you know what, they were really dull, or they were disappointing, weren't they? There's only one person there who has failed, and that's the person doing the interview. So I think that was, you know, if you'd put me in a pub or put me in a party, I would always be there asking, probably being a bit too intrusive really, you know, why did you do that? What made you do that? How did you do that? So that just came very naturally to me. I was just very interested in other people. And then the rest sort of just happened. But I was painfully shy and had to get over that.
I mean, you definitely did. Albert Dock must have been crazy with you, and who else was at Albert Dock at Granada? Richard and
Judy, yeah.
Tony, was he there at that time?
No, Tony Wilson didn't present
He was
then.
later on, wasn't he?
Yeah, I met him when I went to work on Up Front. I did meet him actually in the corridors of Granada when I was in Manchester, and I still remember that first meeting with him. He was just kind of lounging around in the newsroom while the rest of us were running around like headless chickens. He wasn't actually on a shift for the newsroom, so it was fair enough. But I just remember he was like this very cool lounge lizard, sort of like slumped in this chair, just observing what was going on. And I had to get some music from the music library. I mean, you just couldn't even make that up now, could you? And I didn't know where the music library was. And he said, oh, I'll take you there. And so it was miles, down all these corridors. And I remember he took me to the music library. And we had a really good long chat on the way there. And I just thought, this guy is just fascinating, because you couldn't put him in a pigeonhole. You couldn't say he's the best journalist you've ever met, or he is a record producer, or you couldn't put him into one pigeonhole. He was just so entertaining and such good fun. And so, that was our chance meeting then, really. And then a few months later, we ended up working together all the time. So I still, to this day, don't know whether or not someone said, go into the newsroom, check out this new reporter, presenter that we've taken on, and see whether you might work with her. Because Tony was the sort of person who, it was kind of his show. So he hadn't really worked very much with anybody else. And I remember on the first pilot that we did for Up Front, at the very end of it, so it never got broadcast, and at the very end of it, he said, and that's it, from me and the lady, good night. And I said to him, don't ever say that again. And he said, what do you mean? What's the problem with that? And I said, well, don't call me a lady, it's disparaging. I'm not going to call you a gentleman. And if I want to say good night, I'll say good night. You're not going to say it for me. And I think until then, he just thought, oh, she's just going to be a complete pushover. And I wasn't difficult to work with. We had a lot of fun. But it was like I had to draw a line in the sand to say, yes, you are Mr. Manchester. Everybody knows who you are. Although he was from Salford, actually. Proud son of Salford.
Yes.
But I also have a role to play here. And you have to take me seriously.
He always gave feedback on air, is what I remember on my news pieces, which was unusual. That was a really nice piece from Stephen there. No reason to use Gary Newman, though.
Exactly. Exactly. And he used to come up with the most bizarre things. I remember when Mike Hall was doing a live on a very important football game, and they handed back, and he said, thanks, darling.
Yes.
And it was just such a bizarre thing to say, but you always had to be on your toes, because then I had to say, did you just say that? And it was just one of those classic moments. I don't know whether he suddenly thought he was somewhere else talking to someone else, or whether he and Mike did have that very special bond. Mike always laughs about it and says it was an absolute career high.
We had him, when I left Granada, and we put on, reinvented the Tube, the music show for Channel 4. And we had, one of the presenters was Tony. It probably was his last or one of his last shows. And we had him alongside Connie Huck from Blue Peter. And that was an interesting combination, because she loved him, but she properly put him in his place, because she was a Blue Peter presenter, and you don't do that. And I think he quite enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, you had to. I think you had to. I think that... I do remember begging the producer to take me off Up Front after about the third week, because I would get so nervous beforehand, and I was in total awe of Tony. And I felt that I was out of my depth. And I remember this wonderful producer said to me, actually, my perfect presenter would be half of him and half of you, because you listen very carefully to what people say to you. And he's generally going on about Manchester United, which I've heard enough of, with apologies to Manchester United fans. But obviously Tony was a complete...
Yes,
he was completely obsessed with Manchester United. So every parallel for whatever was going on in the NHS or politically or the poll tax, there was always a parallel with what was happening on the pitch at Manchester United.
The fact you were mentioning Up Front, we don't have shows like that anymore. We don't have... Everything has changed recently, hasn't it? And there is an argument that we need journalism, we need trained journalists more than ever for people to listen to people who are going to put people on the spot, don't we?
Well, I'm quite sad that there's not a format or a new format like Upfront used to be, where
So explain to Upfront, because there will be people who don't know Upfront.
So Upfront, basically, I remember one programme in particular where a guy from British Rail at the time sat, one man, in front of an audience of maybe 200 people, and he said, right, I will take any complaint that anyone in this audience has, and let's talk about it. He was described in the national press, actually, funny enough, the following week as the bravest man in Britain. And he took on board complaints about a stale sandwich, or why the train had been delayed from Wigan to Manchester for the third time that week. But we also did the poll tax, so you would have maybe a politician for, a politician against. That was often the format. Or it was something incredibly funny, you know, so you might have 2 or 3 debates in one programme. But some of them, I remember we did one where we were talking about naturists, and you know there were several people in the audience who weren't wearing any clothes. Well, I think they might have been wearing something, but and we had to kind of shoot the programme sort of around the fact that they weren't. And I remember there was one about vegetarianism versus meat eaters. I mean, that sounds quite dated now, but people get so wound up about it. But I felt that at least people who vote got the chance to really hold the politicians to account. I know there's question time and there are programmes like that now, but I feel it's a very sanitised version of it. It was quite raw.
You were walking around, weren't you, if I remember right? There was the audience there and you two were, I mean, Tony was carried off by a wrestler, wasn't he? Wasn't it at some point? But
well, he was actually pushed to the ground by a wrestler.
Yeah.
Because they were getting very upset about allegations being made by people in the audience.
So it was, as you were saying, it was no way question time.
No, it wasn't staged, and it was lively. It was of the minute. You never knew what was going to happen next, and it wasn't the presenters. As presenters, we would try and effectively let the dog see the rabbit. You know, so you would say, right, this person thinks this. What do you think? What have you got to say to them? And then stay out of it and not micromanage it. And you would get some absolutely beautiful moments in that, as well as some real sparks flying.
And that was effectively a regional programme made in Manchester. But did it go network or was it regional?
It didn't go network, but it could have done. The quality of it was definitely good enough to be a network show. But I've always been of the opinion that a regional programme should be of network quality. There's no reason why a regional programme should look like a regional programme, in my view.
And regional news itself, we were speaking earlier, and it's something that the statistics over the years seem to have, when there are big political movements, when there's COVID, when there's certain people getting elected in different countries, when there's Brexit, people get so bombarded now through Instagram, Twitter, X, all of these other places with this news, that regional news usually does quite well, because finally you can switch on someone you trust, you know you're going to get something sensible out of, and there's going to be a sport at the end. I think the power of regional news is always understated, underestimated.
It's absolutely vital, not only because it's a trusted source, but because if you think about it, and I think this for local newspapers as well, they're terribly important. One of the reasons that people stay within the law is the fact that they might end up on the front page of their local newspaper for doing something wrong, or their mum might see it. And I think it's really vital that we keep some sort of service going, because otherwise we're heading for something that is actually quite out of control. And regional news is terribly, terribly important, and not just as a training ground for network news. I think that's the mistake that people make. It's absolutely vital. It was really lovely to hear Lisa Nandy, Culture Secretary, recognise the importance of regional news in the Hillsborough campaign, for example, because network news, by its very nature, it has to go off and do other things. There are always massive stories to cover, but it's really important that as a local broadcaster,
whether you're online or whether you are on the telly in 6 o'clock every night. And we don't really watch television like that very much anymore. But they keep the pressure on. You keep the pressure on the authorities, that you keep the bereaved families in the public eye if that's what they want. When they said you mess with the royal mums, that was very much the case. But it meant that those mums had to have people who would listen to them first. It broke my heart, Hillsborough. When I first started work in the, crazy world of television in the Northwest, and I was working in Liverpool, my dad was very ill, and he died around just after Hillsborough. And it meant that all the people that I interviewed were bereaved parents. And I felt such a bond with them. I did feel, I remember particularly with Trevor Hicks, years later, I remember the two of us doing an interview and we both had tears in our eyes. I know that sounds ridiculous because, obviously he had been through such a terrible time, but actually, it was just recognising how awful that was for him and his family and for all of the other families caught up in it. And I did personally keep the pressure of all the time so that we didn't forget it. And I was sometimes greeted with, we did that last week, we did that last night, we did that last month, and it's like, oh, we need to go back to it because there's been this development or this hasn't happened. To the point where I probably was a complete pain in the arse to work with. And it's like, oh, she's banging on about this again. But I'm just very pleased that I did, that I kept going. And feel like we didn't let him down. Other people did, but he did.
And that's something that only regional news can do.
Well,
It can't be done on a national level because there's so many other stories going on that you can't just put on a Granada level or a BBC Northwest Tonight.
Yeah.
That's...
I think there is a very important role to be played. I think wider than that, though, there's a very important role to be played online to keep the quality of online material up as well. I think there will be all sorts of journalism over the next 40 years that comes to the fore, and I just hope that it's good quality and it's not just about clickbait. It's not just about, leaving the most important line to the last sentence of a story, which I'm just trying to watch my language, really, because of what you said about being in front of a live microphone.
If it's a good enough story, you shouldn't need to clickbait it, is the argument. I might be wrong, but it's all about data, isn't it? It's unfortunate.
Well, inevitably, the problem is that if you want people to stay on your site for as long as possible so that you might take them into other stories. I get that, and I get that a lot of that is driven by advertisers, that you want, what you do to be seen by as many people as possible. But I do think that unless we drive the quality of that material up, people are just going to stop going to certain news outlets, and I think that would be a terrible mistake.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that we are faced with as a culture, society, whatever it might be, is trust. I don't think we've been in this situation before where so many people are describing themselves as journalists and not necessarily doing, according to people's accounts, that arguably a trained journalist would do. I think that is one of our issues that we're going to have in society all going, isn't it? Tell you.
I think going forward, that is going to be one of the most difficult things to navigate. I think trust in material online, or even in the kind of respected media outlets, they have to keep their standards up, because as soon as that trust is lost, it's very difficult to get. I don't think you ever really get it back again.
It's a tough world that these students at Salford University are walking into, isn't it? I don't think it's a very different world from the world we walked into.
Well, we thought the world that we were walking into was tough. I mean, I think one of my first assignments was out on the miners' strike on the picket lines. I think, the world has changed in many ways, but there will always be new challenges. And that's what it's about. It should change. It gets better in many ways. And like I say, I think people who are creative, are driven by people's stories. They will find a platform for that, and they will build up trust with people.
Have you got any advice for undergrads who are going through university now, looking at media careers, or what they should do?
I think you have to be prepared to do anything now. I remember once when I was in the newsroom, somebody coming in and saying, we asked them what advice they'd been given coming into the newsroom. And I remember them saying, actually, the only really important piece of advice that we were told was don't make a cup of tea. That's not what you're there to do. And then I said, well, would you like a cup of tea? I'll go and make it. Because actually, there's no standing on ceremony in a newsroom anymore. People are astounded by the fact that there is no MediaCock, there is no backup, there is no sub-editor, there's nobody checking everything that you do. That's why you're a journalist. You'll be given a lot of responsibility very quickly. You have to be able to step up to the mark when that opportunity calls in. But I know I'm meeting people all the time who can really do that. When I was in the newsroom working at Granada Reports, there were so many people who come in and their skill set was phenomenal. And I was really pleased to see a lot of those who work from Salford University. But obviously, we're not the only university who is making sure the standards are driven up. But I think what's lovely about MediaCity is that we're all on this one site, so there are fantastic opportunities here. It's exciting. There will be times where you think, oh, this is a bit uncertain. It's never going to be a career where you are certain that you are going to always land the job that you want. None of us have ever had that. You always think that you're going to be found out the next week, even if you do a job for a long time. So I think you have to be quite courageous. You have to be prepared for that. You have to be resilient. And you have to find that resilience in yourself. You can't really expect everybody around you to find that for you. Somehow you have to find it in yourself. Because if you step above the parapet, whether it's in radio or television or it's online, people are always ready to criticize you. And do you know what? They have a right to do that.
Where can we now see you? What are you doing now?
Well, I'm trying to mentor some incredibly talented people to make sure that they get the opportunities that they deserve. I can't wait to sit back one day and watch them on the telly because I'm sure that they're going to have great careers. I am doing conferences generally which have at the heart a similar sort of thing, opportunities for young people, often in the north of England, trying to boost business opportunities. For example, I'm the mayors, the two mayors, one of the Full City region, Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham, obviously Andy for the Greater City region. I'm doing an interview with them about their book, Head North, that's just come out. So I'm doing an interview with them. You see, that is something that I'm really passionate about. They are both trying to create opportunities in many different ways for different people. Even things like transport links, all those sorts of issues that hold the North back. And we do need to get together and collaborate on that. As a journalist, quite often you're in competition with another organisation. I think now I'm trying to find areas where I can work with other people for the benefit of particularly the North of England. It is in everybody's interest that we find the talented people in the North of England because they are incredibly creative. So many of our wonderful dramas or our best news journalists come from this part of the world. But the South of England benefits from that because they will see them on the telly, they'll see their dramas, they'll see the amazing work that they do. No, that's what I want to see. I'm not saying that it's to the exclusion of everybody else. I just have a bias towards the North of England.
I'd left Granada and I reported on MediaCity's arriving here. I was like, really? You presumably were Granada at that time, go, I don't know if your opinion was the same. There were people who were saying, what is going to be, is the richest person from Media City, London and Salford going to the guys that operate West Coast Mayhem, as all the Londoners come on, do the meeting, go back down south again. It for people now who haven't been through a north of England without Media City, it's almost incomprehensible to believe that this didn't exist.
I'm not going to lie, I was pretty apprehensive when the concept of Media City was first mentioned. I wasn't sure about it because sentimentally I was attached to what we had done in the past. So I'd worked with Tony Wilson, with Steve Coogan, with Caroline Ahern, all in the old Granada building. I love that building. So when everyone said, right, okay, we're moving to Media City, I thought, I'm not sure about this. The first day that I walked into the newsroom with Tony Morris, and the two of us looked at each other and said, what the heck's going on? It's chaos. The wires all over the floor, all the floorboards were up. Oh my goodness, what is this all about? Of course, all those wires, absolutely so important. And it was the moment when I walked through the door into the studio and I looked at that backdrop with the Imperial War Museum and the Lowry Theatre. And the sun was just the water was glistening and the sun was just shining. And I just thought, this is like stepping into a new world. And that is exactly what it was then. And it has developed so incredibly well since then. It is an amazing success story, not just for the north of England, but the whole of the UK. And I think what I'd like to see is more people come to Media City just to check it out. I went to the amazing Van Gogh exhibition. I brought my sister and her son to it, and they were blown away by it. They'd not been to Media City before. And I think we underestimate how significant it is. All the incredible work that's going on. I mean, the BBC are doing so much of their output now from Media City. It's fantastic. Sport, children's, the news operation from very, very early in the morning, right through the morning till lunchtime news. It's fantastic that that's coming from Salford, from Media City. It's just wonderful to see that. And the concrete jungle that it used to be when I first saw it has now been replaced by a wonderful green space, because all the trees have actually started to grow up. And I would like to congratulate all the people who are responsible for that landscape, because Salford was renowned for its green spaces, its open parks, loads of lovely places to go for walks. And I thought Media City wasn't really ever going to be like that, but it is now. It's a lovely place to film. It's a lovely place to just go for an afternoon stroll, or even if you're inclined to jog around, which a lot of people do. It's a lovely space to work in, and I just hope people are going to appreciate that and have wonderful careers here.
I think people hear Media City and they've got their mind into Milton Keynes almost, haven't they? But then when you see like how you described the Granada backdrop, or how when you see people rowing down the water out there, wherever really, and when in the summer, you could be in a European city, couldn't you?
And you see people in their deck chairs with an ice cream in their hand or a nice cold drink, and you know that they're plotting some amazing gaming thing or a news program for the next day or some wonderful agenda for Blue Peter or some sports quiz. You just don't know what people are doing, but there's amazing creativity all around you. And the sun shining on the water, and it is just lovely. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're in Salford, and it is the place to be when it comes to the media.
It's almost like you're a professional, Lucy, because you've pushed it through. You've mentioned Media City. You've talked about all the other companies, and therefore I can say we are going to be speaking to many of these people plotting about their new game show, the new Blue Peter, the new gaming, whatever they might be doing. And that's the whole point of the This Is Media City podcast. We want to showcase what this place is all about, all the many organisations that work here, all the hospitality, everything is based here. We are going to try and get them to come on the couch and have a chat to us. So if you want to get in touch, if you want to appear, if you want to sponsor the show, please do so. This is MediaCity at 39pictures.com.
And she typed, because it's curly, it does what it says.
Do you know what? It's one of your graduates that came off with it. She's not here today, but I'll tell her. And the other thing is, obviously, if you could please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell everyone about it, and let's spread the word that this is MediaCity. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Please like. Thanks for watching.
This is MediaCity is a 39 Pictures production for MediaCity and in partnership with the University of Salford. The production team are Meg Bond, Tegan Easton, Akila Hewitt and James Young. Okay, thanks for listening and watching to the podcast. And as we said right at the start, this is a bit where we talk about the science behind it. What happened was the start of the podcast, all recorded wonderfully well through the microphones as per usual. And then something, we don't know what, we still don't know what, we've spoken to lots of people, they don't know what either, kind of stopped the recording, but it looked like it was still recording. And we kind of got 2 seconds of record, 2 seconds stopped, 2 seconds record. It was absolutely unusable. So what we did was we used the audio that was coming from our cameras, mashed it together, fed it through some artificial intelligence, which kind of effectively rebuilt our voices, which sounded okay. It sounded like it was coming through proper microphones, but it also sounded a little bit robotic and it occasionally made up words and lost vowels and stuff. Some of that you probably will have heard as well. So then, because artificial intelligence is all very well and good, we fed it into proper human experience intelligence, which was Core Post, based at MediaCity just across the road. And their audio engineers and sound technicians had a listen to it, played with it, and kind of did the best that they could with the original audio plus the AI audio, and gave us what is effectively our podcast now. So we didn't want to run it all as the AI version because that would have sounded odd. So we wanted to show, yes, the start worked and the bottom end, the end of it didn't necessarily. But we also wanted to show, because Lucy was an amazing guest, we didn't want to get it all to do it again. So it just shows what happens when we all come together and collaborate at MediaCity. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Don't worry, we've sorted it all out for the future. So please like, subscribe, comment, share, rate, whatever you need to do to keep the podcast coming. And we shall see you all next week.